Hey everybody, this is lecture review for aggression, which is chapter 10. So our learning outcomes that we're going to talk about are what is aggression, some theories of aggression, influences, and then how we can reduce aggression. So what is aggression? We know kind of what this is already, but we need our good definition from the literature. So this is physical or verbal behavior intended to cause harm. So if you get in a car accident, that's not aggression, that's an accident. So you have to intend to cause harm, verbally or physically. Some of this aggression, what we typically think of is hostile. So this is when it's driven by anger and you want to injure somebody. Other times, though, your anger is instrumental. Or your aggression is instrumental. It's not anger. It's instrumental aggression. So with this, you've got some kind of goal that you're trying to meet and somebody gets kind of hurt in the process, or you have to injure them in order to meet your goal. For example, in hockey, the goal is to get to the puck in the net, and you might have to, push somebody over in order to get there. You're not angry and you're not saying, I can't wait to hurt this guy. You're just saying, you're in my way. I'm going to push you over because I need to get this goal. And so it's just means to an end. There's some theories of aggression. So why are we aggressive? Some people believe that we are aggressive just biologically, that we're born that way, that we actually have to teach ourselves to not be aggressive to other people because that's our natural state. So this is something that, Freud believed. Many people have believed this in the past. Other people have looked to evolution. And with this, they say, maybe it's an instinct. It's just something we're born that way. It's unlearned. But this really doesn't help us explain why some people are so much more aggressive than other people. Others really have shown that aggression can be evolutionarily adaptive. So if you've got two groups and a limited amount of food, the group that maybe aggresses on the other group and maybe kills some of their members or makes them move from that area is the one that's going to get the food. So sometimes aggression can be adaptive and help people survive. There's some other reasons why we might possibly be aggressive. Some of these are neural influences. So they have found differences in brain structure for individuals who are incredibly aggressive. There's no one spot in the brain. We don't have like an aggression spot that we can touch. But we know that there are neural systems that facilitate that, and there are differences in brains for individuals who've shown themselves to be incredibly aggressive. The amygdala is related a lot to our emotions. It's one area that can kind of cause some of these behaviors if stimulated. The prefrontal cortex is part of our frontal lobe, one of the last areas to fully develop, and this is that cognitive break, and so this ends up helping us stop not actually demonstrating aggression. So, if somebody shuts the door and it shuts in our face, this is what helps us stop from just screaming curse words at them and allows us to instead, move about our day. And then there are some ideas or some implications that there may be genetic differences there. So aggression and levels of aggression, quickness to anger, these things do vary among individuals. So some people are much more sensitive to cues that might be aggression. So even if we show like facial features, some people pick up on anger much quicker than others in a face morph where the faces move from neutral to angry. Some people are much more likely to pick up on that anger quickly or are just sensitive to things that might be aggressive. There's differences in temperaments. Some people are just more reactive. And we're able to see that with twin studies, too, that if you have one identical twin who's received a lot of charges for aggressive behavior and things like that, that their identical twin is more likely to also have received similar amounts of charges and stuff, much more so than just siblings or fraternal twins. So this shows us there might be some genetic influence. We also know that there's biochemical influences. So we've got lots of ideas as to why we're aggressive. We know that people, when they drink alcohol, can often be more aggressive. Testosterone, individuals with higher testosterone levels often are showing more aggressive behavior. And then if you have a really poor diet, so increasing, the quality of someone's diet can also decrease. If you increase the quality, you can decrease the aggression. So having a poor diet seems more likely to make us lash out. But really, we just know biology and kind of the environment, biology and behavior, they interact. And so some individuals are more likely to have a personality that's more aggressive, put themselves in more aggressive situations, consume more alcohol, which leads to aggression. And so there's a lot of theories about why we're aggressive. This is a huge one, though, that's been well researched, which is the frustration aggression theory. And this is saying that typically we have some kind of frustration that leads to aggression. So either we're trying to complete a test and somebody keeps talking to us and we're like, rah, lash out. Or we're trying to get to work and there's a ton of traffic and we're just, furious because we're being prevented from our goal. So we have some kind of frustration that leads to anger and to aggressive cues, and that's when we aggress. Sometimes this is displacement. So maybe your boss comes in and yells at you, or your parents yell at you and you can't yell back at that figure, that authority figure. So you end up displacing onto someone you can yell at. So maybe you scream at your younger sibling, or yell at a colleague that's not your boss. You're just displacing that anger onto someone else. And then what they've also shown too is that you can get frustrated but not aggressive. And that's really if that frustration is understandable. If you can see why this situation occurred, it's you see that there weren't a lot of options there for the other individual or whatever it is, then you don't get as aggressive. You're not as likely to be aggressive. Another really big kind of area that people have studied in terms of why we're aggressive or why these things can occur is relative deprivation. So this isn't objective deprivation. It's not saying that individuals without resources are always more aggressive. That would be more objective. This instead is relative. So if you perceive that you are less well off than groups, then you can be more aggressive or feel more aggressive. So what we can see with that is, especially within communities that have these large income inequalities, there can often be more instances of aggression. So areas then where some people have tons of resources, lots of money, and then others in that same area have very little resources, very little money. Often in those areas, crime is higher and happiness is lower. You can watch kind of those links in there. One of them under the crime or under the income inequality will show what happens with monkeys when they're given unequal amounts of food. This can lead to aggression. A lot of areas where we end up seeing this issue too is with television or other media programs. Like the top picture here is My Super Sweet 16, which MTV used to show, as well as MTV Cribs. Both of these really focused on individuals with a lot of resources and demonstrated how posh and exciting their lives were, and can help people, or can make people then feel that their own life and their own resources are inadequate, which can lead to that frustration and aggression. We can also see this by people watching certain things like the Kardashians. So they have lots and lots of money, much more so than most of us. And if we then compare ourselves with those individuals, then we often feel like our life is less than, and this can lead to forms of aggression. Another theory of aggression is looking more at the social types of behavior. So we know that we can learn aggression from other people. We also see that aggression can be rewarded. So that was some of my first instances of seeing aggression in my peers, where things like yo mama jokes. So this is one here: yo mama's so stupid, she took a spoon to the Super Bowl. And then people would laugh, and if you had a really good one, people would be thinking that you were great. And so what I learned then is that when people were using that form of verbal aggression towards others, that was rewarded. It was something that was seen as funny, and so sometimes we can learn aggression that way. There was a really famous and interesting experiment done with the Bobo doll. So if you've never had the chance to hear about that experiment, there is a link in there provided that will show you that. But with this, Bandura showed children a model. So it was an adult model, and they were interacting with the Bobo doll in aggressive or non-aggressive ways. And children then kind of learned how to interact with that Bobo doll from watching the adults. So many then who saw the adult act in aggressive ways also acted in aggressive ways themselves. So we know we learn from watching others. We can see this in culture. If our culture is rife with aggressive models, we can pick that up. If our families often use physical types of punishment, we can pick that up, so we can model that behavior, that aggressive behavior that we see. So we're able to then, this kind of has some of these examples of the theories of aggression. I really enjoy kind of the bottom one there. So we've got this frustration. It's a goal. You're frustrated with that. So you've got this, you can say, okay, whatever, I'm not dealing with it. That's withdrawal. Or you can say, I'm going to, aggress. I feel very frustrated. You can turn that inward, or you can turn that outward. And so both of these models kind of just help us explain some of these concepts. So we've got a lot of our theories of why we aggress. So some of these are more biological in nature, genes, evolution. Others are more social in nature, so we know that we can observe and then model aggressive behavior. There's a lot of other influences on aggression. So if we have these aversive experiences, things that are painful or that make us unhappy, this can lead to aggression. So when people are in pain, we often see people lash out. So you can see this a lot if you've ever been to or worked at a hospital. If someone's in a lot of pain, they might be cursing, hitting others. Their pain is leading them to aggress. If rooms are really hot If someone's insulted, like if you did say one of those yo mama jokes to somebody, they may then aggress on you. And then crowding. So if things are just, if you're uncomfortable, if it's, 100 degrees outside, you're stuck in a giant crowd like this, and then somebody looks over at you and says some kind of, minor comment, you might just attack them. You're just uncomfortable. And so you attack. We've also seen in some research that sometimes if we have this arousal, which again, according to psychologists, is just feeling something, it's not sexual arousal, it's just, our body states are kind of up in we're physiologically aroused. So with this Schachter and Singer, they had a group of men, and they all received shots. Some received shots of saline, so we're not really going to talk about them. The important group was those who received shots of adrenaline. With this shot of adrenaline, some men were told what to expect. So the adrenaline's going to make your heart pump, make you sweaty. That's what you should expect. Others were just told, hey, this is vitamins. Don't worry about it. It won't make you do anything. So some men were aware, some men were unaware of what to expect from the shot. Then they put them in the company of other people. Some of these Confederates, these other people, were acting in an angry manner. Some were acting in a happy manner. What they found is that those individuals who did not know why they felt so much arousal, so they had the shot of adrenaline, were not told what to expect. Those people looked to the environment and said, why am I feeling so aroused? Why is my heart beating so fast? Why am I so sweaty? It must be because I am angry or excited, whatever it is that was happening in their environment. So the main takeaway is that arousal can be interpreted then in different ways. So sometimes if your body just feels aroused, you might look around and say, why? Why is this happening? So, if you happen to go to a scary movie, you're aroused because of the scary movie, but you're on a first date, you might say, oh, it's the movie, or you might say, oh, it's the date. We can interpret it in different ways. So arousal then feeds emotions. And this just kind of helps us to see, again, some of these charts are just to help explain some of this further. The aversive situation is we're in a crowd, we're hot, we're frustrated. It's leading to all these feelings, to arousal and thoughts and memories that are hostile. That leads us to aggress against others. Other influences on aggression are things that we see in our environment. So cues, this can be guns. So they've shown even just the general presence of a firearm can make people sometimes act more aggressively. And then media influences. One way we see these influences of media is with pornography. So individuals who watch pornography that really demonstrates some of this aggressive tones. So not just more neutral or positive themed pornography, but those that have more of a sexual violence aspect. They often then distort their perceptions of sexual reality and accept more of the rape myth, which is this idea that women will say no, especially women, because that's typically what we're talking about here, but really it could be anybody, so that the person will say no, but they really mean yes. That's more of the rape myth. So individuals who watch then more aggressive pornography are more likely to accept that people want you to aggress on them sexually. So this can lead to then acceptance and then actual violence against women, as we can see in this chart, with individuals who have the opportunity to watch pornography or more neutral content, erotic or pornographic content, and then that aggressive pornography. Those who watch the aggressive pornography are more likely to shock women to a higher level. So that's kind of the biggest thing there, is that aggressive pornography can lead to those issues. We can also see this media with television. So television can make us act more aggressive. It can give us that high level of arousal. Sometimes seeing people do things that we might otherwise want to do can disinhibit us, and we'll feel like, oh, okay, we could do that too. And then sometimes you just imitate it. So I know I've even seen that in my own kids. If they watch sumo wrestling, then they'll want to pretend to be sumo wrestlers. They're just imitating that behavior. So, there's many ways that TV can impact us, and it can also desensitize us. So we see so many instances of violence on the television that, sometimes we just stop caring. We've seen it before. It tells us social scripts. So how do people act in certain situations? So, if you're watching a lot of things where men are aggressive to women, you might think that's how you should approach a woman, is by being aggressive. So it just alters our perceptions. It changes our scripts for how people act. And then sometimes it can prime us. So, I know that I see this all the time. That's why I can't watch scary movies. If I watch something scary, it primes me to think everything in my environment is scary. So, if somebody just moves a little bit, I think, a ghost or something. So, it can prime you to think in a certain way. And then, I think that's fascinating that the frequency of TV viewing at age 8 is associated with this mean number of criminal justice convictions. And, the link below also provides this information from Seattle Children's. And really what they say is that, they demonstrate this evidence that really watching violent television can lead to violent behaviors, especially if it's something that's being engaged in consistently. It's highly violent. There's not a lot of explanation of what's happening from other adults, and the kids are kind of bathing in that violence. Then this can be problematic. And we see the same thing with video games. So the games kids play, if your kid is playing Tetris, that's not going to lead to violence. But if they're playing things like, Grand Theft Auto, which we can see up here, someone has been run over with the vehicle, there's a weapon being pointed at an individual, there is, a blood spatter here. I mean, this is incredibly violent. And if you have a little kid who's repeatedly playing this and is not having a lot of adult supervision, not having someone tell them, this is fake here, and if you actually did do this, you would go to jail, or, there's no explanation there, then this can really lead to some issues. So we've got that repeated violent game playing on our little chart, leading to all of these issues. So aggressive beliefs, expectations, they're becoming desensitized. So after you run over so many people and see the blood splatter, you just start saying, oh, okay, that's what happens, and it's not shocking to you anymore. So all of this, especially over time, really can lead to that aggressive personality. So media makes a big difference. We also see this happen with groups. So we know groups can be good, groups can be bad. Some way that our groups are more bad for us can be that diffusion of responsibility. So, if there's a bunch more people, these group decisions then often become more aggressive in nature. So, we can also kind of feel, trying to think of how I want to express that one. Yes, so social cognition. All of these things, or social contagion, that's probably why I'm struggling, right? So group influences, you can be kind of contagious. If a group that you're in is being aggressive, social contagion, you'll also be aggressive. You want to maintain your identity close to that group. So if you're in an aggressive group, you might then aggress. We can amplify each other's aggressive tendencies. So if you're in a mob and they're like, let's kick that vehicle, and you're like, yeah, and they're like, let's push it over, and you're like, they're just really, you want to be part of the group, so you're aggressing, they're amplifying your ideas, and then that group just becomes more and more strong and polarized, and then is more aggressive as a group than you would be as a whole. So what the research really shows us, big factors in being aggressive, being male, so of course not all males are violent, it's just a big factor. Personalities, alcohol use, engaging in lots of violence in their media content, being anonymous, so that's why we end up with issues with things like cyberbullying. People don't know who you are. Being provoked, people will often be more aggressive when provoked. If there's weapons available even in the environment at all, even if you're not touching them, can lead to aggression. And then being in a group. So how do we reduce it then? So there's all these factors talked about, reasons why it happens, instances where we can see it occur, and so reducing it. There was this idea of catharsis, and this idea was that if you took your aggression out on some other area, that you would then feel better. You would vent it, and then you wouldn't be angry anymore. But that really, research says that doesn't work. So if you express your hostility, this often breeds more hostility. So if you go into an anger room, for example, and you crunch everything, instead of walking out feeling better, many times that just makes us feel more aroused and even more upset. So a better way to do that is better way to approach that is to then learn non-aggressive ways to express one's feelings. So Daniel Tiger says, when you feel so mad that you want to roar, take a deep breath and count to 4. So, a non-aggressive way to express that. And then we can also help through social learning. So we can reward and model non-aggression. There's a lot of non-aggressive TV that children can watch, Daniel Tiger, Doc McStuffins, Sesame Street. So we're modeling that. Reducing expectations that are not reasonable. So sometimes we just expect that we can do something in 20 minutes and it's not reasonable. Like, I'm going to get from my home and get a coffee and get to work all in 20 minutes. And then you're frustrated because you're in traffic and someone's in front of you when you're trying to get coffee and they're pissing you off and you can't get there. And, sometimes we just have to realize that's not a reasonable expectation and change our views there. Teach people how to resolve conflict in a better way, reduce some, especially that violent media consumption. And then one area where people have looked has been, if we know that mere presence of weapons can be important, is that an area that we should consider? So that really, 20 minutes of aggression that fills us up there. And, please feel free to ask any questions you have. And thank you for participating here.